public association human rights movement Bir Duino-Kyrgyzstan is an impartial human rights organization. Its mission is to protect human rights and freedoms on the basis of the UN Universal Declaration of Human Rights through promotion of respect to human dignity, principles of universality and equality. To achieve its key goals, the organization implements sustainable, innovative programs, such as protecting the political environment for CSOs, promoting the rights of human rights defenders, combating torture and impunity, strengthening communities to create a national action plan for the prevention of risks and disasters through the equal participation of women and youth, strengthening the voice of vulnerable people by conducting the annual International Festival of Documentary Films on Human Rights and the expansion of civic solidarity networks, equal participation, joint advocacy programs from local to global.
We believe that civil society must collaborate with local actors to lead a risk-informed development. However, 6 particular drivers of risk exacerbate the impact of disasters and make risk-informed development more challenging.
As part of the implementation of the VFL project of the International Association for Disaster Risk Reduction and Threat Reduction (GNDR) in Kyrgyzstan, a study is being carried out on key threats to representatives of local communities in the regions of the country. The resulting data are used in conjunction with government agencies, partner organizations, the Ombudsman's Office, the National Advisory Committee, the expert community, and local self-government bodies of Kyrgyzstan when developing recommendations for improving the National Action Plan to prevent and counter risks and threats. Viewed from the Frontline is the largest independent global survey for local disaster risk reduction. It aims to enhance participation and cooperation between people at risk, civil society, and government in the development and implementation of policies and practices aimed at reducing risk and increasing the resilience of local communities. The VFL established a local baseline and local monitoring process to measure progress towards a comprehensive people-centered approach to building resilience in line with the Sendai Framework for Disaster Risk Reduction and the Framework for the 2030 Sustainable Development Goals Agenda. The VFL aims to raise awareness and strengthening the accountability of the government and intergovernmental bodies. The VFL has a system-wide perspective that recognizes that different actors have different but interrelated responsibilities at different administrative levels. The main priority is the participation and strengthening of dialogue platforms with the prospects of attracting more participants at the interstate level, strengthening the direct interaction of experts with government representatives and decision makers in order to respond to risks in a timely manner so that they do not become global disasters, as well as a quick response and mobilizing forces for new types of threats such as the coronavirus pandemic, which has spread to almost every country in the world.
Why is women's leadership important in the Central Asia region? According to the latest UN's estimates, the Central Asia is at the 5th place among the subregions of Asia in terms of quantity of the population. This is about 1% of the world's population. The share of Uzbekistan in the total CA population is about 45%, Kazakhstan 25%, Tajikistan 13%, Kyrgyzstan and Turkmenistan 8.5% each. The birth rate is positive in the region, about 3 children per 1 woman of reproductive age, which explains the continued dynamics of the population growth. 48% of the residents live in cities, which changes the perception of Central Asia as a region with a predominant rural population. The main focus areas of the economy are industrialization and reorientation of exports from raw materials to products with high added value. Central Asia remains one of the regions with the youngest population with an average age of 27.6. However, more women than men live in Kyrgyzstan and Kazakhstan. Women in Kyrgyzstan are 30 times more likely to die in childbirth than women in Belarus, Italy, Norway or Poland. In Kazakhstan, the rate of murders of women remains high, Significant gaps also remain in legislation and practice. For example, Turkmenistan still has no separate legislation on domestic violence or other forms of violence against women. Why are joint innovations of WLP plus 20 and alternative forms of education important and necessary in the context of the pandemic in the Central Asian region and at the global level? Joint innovative education programs, consultations, and disaster prevention strategies will lead to broader regional thematic discussions focused on 7 priority areas: ending violence against women, economic justice and rights, physical integrity, sexual and reproductive health and rights, feminist action for climate justice, technology and innovation to advance gender equality, feminist movements and leadership, and women, peace and security. Recommendations: continue to work on empowering women and girls in Central Asia, specifically eliminate gender-based discrimination, eliminate sexual harassment and violence against women, ensure that women are represented at decision-making levels, make sure that women know where to go for medical help. In the context of the pandemic due to fear, this has become a problem. Provide technical education. Provide women with economic education to enable them to get self-employed in the context of digital economy and online commerce. Many women lost their jobs during the pandemic. In 2021, plan and conduct an offline Central Asian regional TOT to attract and train more experienced trainers from among women activists who will work together with us after the training and replicate the WLP methodology.
Access to equal justice. Case of human rights defender Azimjan Askarov. Azimjan Askarov is a human rights defender, prisoner of conscience, winner of the Homo Homini Award, International Press Freedom Award, Human Rights Defender Award. Died on 25th July 2020 in Colony 47. The case of Askarov demonstrated how an illegally convicted human rights defender and a victim of torture failed to get access to equal justice from the Kyrgyz authorities for 10 years. Bir Duino continues to protect his interests and expects the participation of international institutions and UN special reporters on extrajudicial executions, torture, and human rights defenders based on our reports regarding the death of the human rights defender in prison. Askarov's case demonstrates the situation of thousands of victims of injustice in prison suffering from illegal charges, torture, and ill treatment, and lack of access to medical care. Torture. Bir Duino alone receives applications for legal advice for more than 150 victims of torture and their relatives every year. With the support of the UN Voluntary Fund, we provide legal defense in almost 15 cases to 20 victims of torture annually. The data provided indicate that torture will continue to be widely used by the security agencies, and that since the moment Kyrgyzstan gained independence, only in 4 cases the court convicted the perpetrators of torture. The transfer of investigation of torture cases to the CSNS has worsened the situation due to the close nature of this body. The anti-extremist legislation, largely copied from the one in Russian Federation, also contributes to the detention and torture of ordinary religious citizens. Pandemic. Bir Duino was one of the first organizations which got actively involved in providing humanitarian aid to vulnerable migrants in new settlements of Bishkek since the beginning of the coronavirus pandemic and quarantine, provided PPE and disinfectants to closed institutions, organized a hotline for provision of psychological and social support to the population. As a result of monitoring of orphanages and psychiatric institutions conducted jointly with the Ombudsman Institution, recommendations were sent to the ministries of the need to provide institutions with protective means. As a continuation of this work, Bir Duino, with the support of the US Embassy Small Grants Program, is working to protect human rights in orphanages, psychiatric and children institutions. Our preventive visits to the institutions conducted jointly with the NCPT and the Ombudsman Institution provided a full picture of the extent of COVID-19 spread in the institutions, situation with the access to medical care and PCR tests. A hotline for provision of legal advice on human rights violations during the COVID-19 period has been set up. Advocacy. Bir Duino conducts advocacy work on the need to implement the UN call for the release of prisoners in accordance with the Nelson Mandela rules and the Tokyo rules. On the need to create an independent commission including civil society representatives, experts, and lawyers for the release of convicts. The need to reform the state penitentiary service to transform it into a social institution. Development of a national emergency response plan including such emergencies as COVID-19. The consequences of the COVID-19 pandemic in Kyrgyzstan have had a significant impact on the living standards and financial situation of socially vulnerable segments of the population. This period has made the situation of children and women doubly worse, and family violence has increased by 60%. During the pandemic, the Alternative Center under the human rights movement Bir Duino-Kyrgyzstan launched a hotline for providing psychological, social, and legal advice to people. As a result, assistance was provided to more than 160 families, and the center's volunteers provided food packages to 203 most vulnerable families, such as single mothers, women with disabilities, and women internal migrants. The families in need were identified in collaboration with local authorities and social services, and the food packages were provided by charitable foundations, trade unions, and citizens. Also, under the auspices of our center, a beauty salon has been opened where girls with disabilities work. We provided a room for this purpose free of charge and equipped it for a salon. All the clients of the salon can additionally get free advice on labor rights. Recommendations: interaction between local authorities, social services, and NGOs working in the area of psychological, social, and legal support for families and children from vulnerable groups. Providing access to educational resources. Providing material assistance to children in need, clothing, shoes, medicines, personal protection means. Creating a sustainable mechanism for groups in need to conduct their own income-generating activities. A large-scale information campaign in the media and social networks with recommendations of psychologists and experts to inform families in need on safety measures, health maintenance, and prevention of family violence during the coronavirus pandemic. The International Festival of Documentary Films on Human Rights Bir Duino-Kyrgyzstan 2020. The International Festival of Documentary Films on Human Rights Bir Duino-Kyrgyzstan 2020 focused on the theme People and Disasters, how to prevent risks from becoming disasters. Disaster risk reduction is not only a matter of surviving the disaster, it also means developing the ability of citizens to manage their risks in a way that protects them from harm and improves their quality of life. States that have joined the Sendai Framework for Disaster Risk Reduction 2015-2030 recognize that progress depends on the general civil approach, which should involve key stakeholders, including women, persons with disabilities, children and youth, older persons, ethnic groups, the private sector, and civil society in all its diversity. The festival will be dedicated to 8 of those goals. Goal 3: Good health and well-being. Goal 4: Quality education. Goal 5: Gender equality. Goal 6: Clean water and sanitation. Goal 8: Decent work and economic growth. Goal 10: Reduce inequality. Goal 16: Peace, justice, and strong institutions. Goal 17: Partnership for sustainable development. The festival is held by the human rights movement Bir Duino-Kyrgyzstan with the technical support of the Embassy of Switzerland in the Kyrgyz Republic, together with the Solidarity Networks, WLP, FIDH, CSP, and GNDR. The International Festival of Documentary Films on Human Rights is a broad horizontal participatory civic platform that has been raising key issues of human rights and freedoms in a changing world since 2007. Since 2000s, the PAHRM Bir Duino-Kyrgyzstan has been making a contribution to the development of the economy by supporting small and medium-sized businesses, as well as individual entrepreneurs, paying for the lease of premises for events and renting offices in Osh and Bishkek, taxi transportation, services within the country, paying for experts and technical services. The organization supports vulnerable groups and particularly provides humanitarian aid.